Welcome to the True You Summit. I'm Carrie Rubin, your summit host and Chief Mom Officer at the Modern Mom Society. I'm excited to bring you this summit to help you get the tools you need to live an authentic and joyful mom life that's aligned to what your body, soul, and mind desires. I hope you enjoyed this limited time free interview with one of the 15 experts that are here to discuss how you can get closer to your true you. Each day of the summit, we will explore 5 different areas of your life where you can improve your connection to your true you as a busy mom. Parenting, mom life, authenticity, spirituality, and mind and body. You'll have 24 hours free access to listen to the 3 experts discussing the topic of the day. Otherwise, you can purchase lifetime access to these life-changing series of interviews. There are 2 different packages available. The basic package, which includes all 15 interviews in MP3 format, can be purchased for $29, or the deluxe package, which includes all 15 interviews in audio, video, and transcript format, so you can get this great information whichever way you prefer. Plus, the deluxe package also includes bonus PDFs. One is the How to Connect to Your True You guide. It highlights the ways that the experts shared in their interview as to how they personally connect to their true selves, as well as the common ideas and themes throughout. So if you're new to connecting to your true you, or you're out of practice, you can start trying on these different ways of getting in tune with your inner wisdom, intuition, and true self right away. The second bonus PDF is Key Takeaways from the Summit. As I was recording all of these interviews, I noticed common themes and threads throughout. And this bonus document highlights these keys, so you'll be sure to get the most important ideas and begin to make shifts towards a happier, joyful, more aligned, and more fulfilled mom life today. The $29 and $59 prices for the basic and deluxe packages are good now through the end of the summit on May 10th. After that, the prices will go up to $59 and $89 respectively. So if you think you're going to miss any of these great interviews, or you'll know you want to have lifetime access to them, be sure to grab your True You Summit package upgrade today. Here's today's interview. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, and welcome to the True You Summit presented by the Modern Mom Society. I'm Carrie Rubin, your summit host and the Chief Mom Officer over at the Modern Mom Society. I'm excited to bring you the summit to help you get the tools you need to live an authentic and joyful mom life that's aligned to what your body, soul, and mind desires. Today's expert is Angie Martin. Angie is a certified life purpose coach for mamas ready to let go of comparisonitis and fear so they can start living in a more joyful life, feeling confident and secure when who they are as women, not just moms. I came across Angie in a Facebook group that we were both members of, and I loved her message about quitting comparing yourself, ditching mom guilt, and finding joy, all things that align so perfectly with the theme of the True You Summit. So we dig into all of those topics in this interview, and Angie offers some really practical and useful suggestions for how we can move away from feeling bad about where we are relative to where we think we should be, or someone else is, and start moving toward where we want to be. Here's the interview. Welcome to the True You Summit, Angie. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here too.
Yeah, so I found you in one of these Facebook groups that we're both members of, and I was exploring your website, and it seems like you're a perfect fit for this because some of the topics you touch on are perfect relating to True You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that too.
So I'm curious if you could dig in a little bit about comparisons and why we as moms find ourselves comparing ourselves and our children to other moms. Why is that not a good thing to do?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's such a broad topic and such a hard one to answer, but so good, right? Because it's, I feel like I usually refer to it as like the plight of the modern mom, like comparisonitis.
Totally.
It's like an illness that we all live with. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to shake it. And you can talk about it all you want. You can talk about not doing it. You can post all the motivational quotes about, being confident in who you are and about every mom is doing their best. Like you can do all of this extracurricular work, so to speak, and you can still struggle with it so much. Like I still do. Yesterday I was looking through someone's Instagram feed and I was like getting annoyed. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. I'm annoyed because I'm jealous, because I'm comparing myself, because mine isn't like that, because I don't say the words the same way that she says the words, and I'm like, so I catch myself all the time because I have the sort of the training, the experience, the insight, the self-development junkie aspect of me knows all these things. So I catch myself and stop. But I think for the majority of moms and women out there, but I focus on moms, and I think moms have it harder, maybe. I don't know.
I think so.
It's like, if you're not really that aware of it, you might not catch yourself and you might go down a rabbit hole. And I think part of the problem is, well, it's like manifold. There's social media and the ridiculous amount of information that's out there about everything to do with raising children, with being an adult, with managing a house, with like everything so if you're a mom and you have you have a spouse, or you don't, but you have a home and you have kids, one or more, you have like all these different hats. Maybe you work inside the home or outside the home, or you stay at home and you maintain your house and your family while your spouse or partner is the breadwinner. All the different roles that you play, somebody has something to say about it. And usually more than somebody. And all the people that saying something about it are saying different things about it. And they're all experts, quote unquote. It's like, I call it like expert noise. Everybody's an expert, and everybody is telling you how to do it right. And even I find, which really, really grinds my gears, I find that even the people that are out there to help, that are trying to make you feel better, that really care about kids, they are trying to help you, right? They're trying to, they write an article, somebody writes an article to try to help you, educate you about, say, screen time, right? The big screen time problem. So somebody's really trying to educate others about screen time and what the research shows around this. But instead of just doing that and maybe giving some tips on, like, if you would like to reduce screen time for your children and you think that it's going to be hard to do, these are some tips on how to do it. They will start with an article title that says, "We are ruining our children."
Right.
And so, like, the mom reading that really has been wanting to do less screen time, but is struggling because the kid throws a tantrum, is like, oh my God, I suck as a parent. I'm ruining my kid. He's going to be a drug addict and a murderer.
Right.
Like, why? The title is shaming. And the people that are doing it aren't doing it on purpose. They're like, I'm not shaming, I'm just helping. But like, what I see is everybody is taking it as an accusation because we all feel like we're doing all the bad things. So it's like a vicious cycle. And it's all, I think, part of it is the enormous amount of information on every side of the coin. And you having to sort of grasp like, what does this mean, and grapple with what is my position on this, and then you have to feel confident with what position you chose will be your position about it, because you're obviously going to be judged, because that's what's going on in your head, right? Like, nobody really sees into your house, but you're judging yourself based on what, if somebody walked in here, what they would think,
right?
And at the same time, we're not judging other people by what their life is really like. We're only judging other people by what we see that they put out.
Which isn't the whole picture.
Right, which is the highlight reel. And the majority of people, even when I think because of our own insecurities, when we're trying to be real and genuine, we're making a joke of it. So we're being genuine about how I'm a hot mess. We're not being genuine about how I feel like I'm not enough and I want to go in the bathroom and cry. Like that's not what some people are doing it. And I'm like, every time I see like people being honest about this stuff, I get, excited that more and more people are doing it, because it just gives somebody a chance to realize like, okay, me too, they too. Because the joking it's always good to like, lighten things up. It's always good to have funny like jokes about it. I'm not like some sort of grump that like doesn't, I love mom related memes. They're funny, but at the end of the day, I want every mom to have at least one person that they can be real with, because we need it. I think we need it because of the environment that we're in. Because if we were a bajillion years ago, and nobody had like this much access to information and to sharing information and to showing what I want others to see, except for like how people get dressed to go to church or something. It's like, you know, moms, I think, I mean, I've tried to look back at what my mom was like. And I've talked to some moms that have like grown children and stuff and what it was like. And some of them are very confident and we're always like, well, I didn't really like talk to it about it with anybody. I just did what I thought was right. And I moved on with my life. And, but then I have actually talking to my own mother, and my youngest sibling is 34. So I have, my oldest brother is 44. Jeez, 44. I'm like, so there's a 10-year span. And I've, you know, we've had conversations where she would be talking about how, you know, maybe when my oldest brother was a teenager and was having a hard time with something, she would be hanging out with her friends, and they would be all talking about their kids, like trophy that they got at this, or trip that they're taking with that friend, and how she felt inadequate. And I was like, so it was there. It's just worse now.
It's way worse because we're comparing ourselves against, instead of a small community, you know, just like our neighbors and the people we run, and we're the whole wide world. And I find that, like, I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram. I like the pictures and I like the platform, but the people with like the perfectly curated, like, I don't know how they get their pictures to look the way they do, but they just look completely manufactured and not real. And that infuriates me.
Yeah.
And I don't compare myself to that. And I mean, I look at that and I think it's exhausting because that looks like a lot of work to curate it like that.
It looks like you're always with your kids, but I don't know when then you would do the filters to all look the same. Like, is it always the same amount of light in your house?
Yeah, in a
white house.
Right. Yeah, your perfectly spotless, minimalist white house with no toys around. I don't get it. But, you know, I have the consciousness to know that that's not fake, but that's not realistic, but I don't know that everybody does. And then the other point that you made about the experts, I hadn't really thought about it in that context where they're trying to be helpful and they're saying you need to reduce screen time. But I never really thought of that as a judgment and a thing that causes us to compare ourselves and how we're doing. And it's so true because there is so much information and everybody has an opinion, and moms out of every group in society are the ones that are the most judged because, you know, we're raising the next generation of people, and there's, you know,
somehow dads aren't, even though
I know
like, my husband is super involved in our family, but like
mine too.
He does not compare his parenting to anybody else's.
No, he does. My husband does the same thing. I mean, my husband is very involved, and I'm really grateful for all that he does. But he doesn't care at all. Like, he does what he thinks.
Exactly. Even like, he doesn't even compare himself to me. Like, he never says like, "Oh, you do better at this." Like, I'm like, okay, I do.
Right. I am a little bit better, but
like I slightly know everything, and you don't. But you know. But it's funny. It's like a genetic thing. I mean, I think there are probably dads that are very involved, that are the ones that are posting on Instagram. Like, my husband doesn't even have Instagram. So I could imagine that dads that are into social media could potentially fall prey to some of this. But no, it's mostly moms. Mostly moms. We're the ones that it'll be our fault. If it goes wrong. It won't be dad's fault.
So I'm curious how you coach moms around filtering out all of that and getting to what's true for them and not comparing themselves to what an expert thinks or what their friends are doing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, great question. So, you know, it's obviously sort of an individualized thing, but usually when I'm working with moms where this is a problem, And sometimes they don't even identify it, right? And it is because they start, like, their gremlin starts coming out in the conversations, like their inner critic, their inner mean mama, and they start calling themselves names. And I'm just like, wait a minute, like that's you telling yourself a story about something because of a comparison you're making. Like, you wouldn't say that you wouldn't think that you're not a good enough mama if you didn't have an idea of what a mom should be. And get that idea. You got it either from a story that your mom told you growing up, from your experience with your parents, from your experience that you didn't want to repeat, or from what you're looking around and what you think should be. Like, should, like, take it out of your vocabulary. Like, first, I will, like, make some rules. Like, if I'm working with someone who wants to be challenged, gently and lovingly, sometimes I do try to, like, make some, like, vocabulary rules. Like, let's try to go a certain amount of time without saying should. Try to come up with another way to say that you want to do something differently next time. Why you want to do it, not because you should, but why. Like, if wanting is nowhere near there, then you're not doing it for the right reason, right? Then it's like a fear-based decision, not a conscious-based one. But, we look at people's values, and in having people do an exercise to determine what their top values are, which can obviously change over time because we all are in changing seasons of life. So today I can value time with friends, and tomorrow I might not value it as much, or it might just drop down to 6 in the priority list because right now I'm more focused on extra time with family and focusing on maybe my career. And so, like, right now, maybe friends is not as important as it was yesterday or whatever, or like as it was last year.
That makes a lot of sense.
So values, our top values fluctuate. You could have like 50 things that you value in life, but like your top 5, they might change a little bit. But so if you look at right now, what are your top values out of a list of like a ton of them? And you really have to work hard on figuring out which ones really you would like to have it at 10 out of like 1 to 10. Then you can start like sort of analyzing, like, how are you honoring those values? If you're not honoring those values as much as you'd like to, like if you say, being true to myself is one of my top values, but I feel like right now I'm like at a 5 out of 10. Okay. What can you do to bring that number up? What are some exercises or some habits or some routines that you can establish, or some like journaling, whatever, right? Everybody has different things that work for them, but what are some things you can do to bring that being true to yourself value to a higher sort of place that you feeling like you're honoring it? So when example, right? Like when I'm posting on social media only with filters that make me look prettier, am I honoring my true self? Okay, no. So maybe something that I can do is try to use less filters. Or maybe, but like, and I won't ever tell my clients what to do, like sometimes it's a little hard, and like separating like coaching from like mentoring someone. Like, I don't want to give you the answers, but like, I hope they come up with a good one, It's like, usually they do, if you like wait patiently and you're not afraid of silence, people will come up with a really good solution that works for them. That might not be what I had in mind, but it might be like the one that works.
Right. That's the hardest part of being on the receiving end of coaching, in my opinion. They're like, so what do you think? I'm like,
I don't know.
I don't know. Tell me the answer.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier that way.
Definitely. But, in my coach school community of people that went through the same training, people will be like, okay, guys, can you help me out? Like, can you give me like some ideas on like, follow-up questions for, I don't know. Well, actually, a year ago, somebody did that. Like, what do you do when your client just says, I don't know? And somebody was like, oh, I have a bunch of questions for that. And like, they shared like a PDF file that they had of like how to follow up. And I was like, oh, I'm saving this one. Yeah. Because it's hard to be like, okay, some ideas could be, and like, depending on the coaching relationship, sometimes I might suggest, okay, this is what some other people have done. I don't know if that would work for you, but this is what another client did that helped her. And this is what another client did. And so like, I won't say like, I would do this if I were you.
Yeah.
But I might give examples like of a third party that don't give away who it is or anything. And that might help somebody like come up with ideas. But then,
but I want to interject here because I think this is something that is really, for me, has been really important, like pausing and making them come up with an answer. And I encourage people who are listening to do the same, because especially somebody who is used to comparing themselves and used to taking other people's advice and following the experts, they haven't flexed that muscle of figuring out what is true for them. So really, really sitting with that blank canvas and coming up with the answers yourselves is so important, especially for the people who are people pleasers and trying to do all the things that everybody else thinks that they should do.
That is so good. So good. I agree, because it's, you know, sometimes you're just like, they're so quiet and they're so, I don't know. And you're like, well, you know, like it's hard because in human nature is like, let me give some suggestions.
Right.
But then the person is like, oh my God, these are the only options.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even going to think about what they might think is right. They might be like, okay, so I guess I'll journal about it. Mm-hmm. But like they've never picked up a journal. Mm-hmm. Or like they have in the past and like they don't really like it. Mm-hmm. But now they think they have to journal about it. So it's extremely hard to do, but it's like you said, it's definitely going to get them to flex that muscle of like self-confidence and of knowing that like I can have the answers within. Mm-hmm. And then if if they try something that they came up with themselves, that pride, you know, like I usually will be like a super cheerleader and just sort of always like validate, you know, their different attempts to do different things. And just like, I mean, somebody that wants to be coached, that's like already something to be a cheerleader about. It's like really hard to even come to a place where you think that you need it or where you even understand what it is. It's just hard, you know, it's not like commonplace for many people. With that example about the values, will bring you to then, you know, if I have a chance to do a little bit of education, I can talk about how other people's values, like you're comparing yourself to someone who values a clean house when you value adventures with your family. Mm-hmm. So your values are different. Mm-hmm. So you don't know if that person's sitting there being like, oh my God, they get to go on so many camping adventures. How fun. Mm-hmm. And all I have is this plain, boring house. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want that to be their story, but it could be. Like, you don't know, right? And so, and I remember one time I used to, a couple of years ago, I used to follow this mom who somebody recommended, like, oh, look, their pretty feed. And I was like, ooh, I like to see their pretty feed. And so I started following her, and I was like, and it was terrible for me. And I didn't have the insight to recognize it, but I was like, oh my God, like, how does she do that? How does she keep, like, I don't know what the rest of her house looks like. But then all of a sudden, she like didn't post for a week. And then she posted that she was going to be taking a break because she was depressed. She was experiencing postpartum depression, and she needed to take a break. And I was like, because she's real. And she probably was scrutinizing this whole brand that she was building. She was scrutinizing it while like trying to nurse a new baby and show this perfect life. And her life wasn't perfect, and she beat herself up, you know, whatever was going on. But it's like an aha moment. It's like so sad, poor girl, poor woman, you know. And I'm glad she's doing something about it. But how many people are not doing something about it? And I'm showing you that beautiful feed and struggling in the background. And here I am going, talk to me. I want to help you.
Yeah, right. And then I think too, we try to do all the things. Like we want to have, you know, your top 5 values be all 5 of them be your number one. And then you end up running yourself ragged and you can't keep up. And then you end up being miserable too. So do you have any tips for prioritizing and how to make things work within what's realistic in your life? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think some of the exercises that I like to do around that is kind of like if you had like, you know, like visioning, like closing your eyes and like visualizing like waking up and like everything being just like, wow, like what happened? Was there a miracle overnight? Like
Mm-hmm.
everything is the way that makes me feel joy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, then describing what is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's there? Where are you? What are you doing? What are you not doing? And then being like, okay, so like that's like, let's look at like what are the values in play there. And then if you have like all 5, then it's like, okay, that's the picture of like perfection, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that we can't achieve. So like what's like backtrack, like what's something else that like could be like really awesome right now, that is like much for you, like feels much more joyful, much more closer to like the amount of joy and the amount of fulfillment that you want to feel in your life, but that is more realistic. Like what's realistic for you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's realistic, that vision that you had? If you think that's realistic, let's go for it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't think it's realistic, like what's realistic and achievable right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so like taking baby steps to get to that first point of like something would be like a little bit better. And like, let's work on that. What can you do then to get to that point where it's a little bit better? So like little by little, baby steps, you might get to that place in that dream vision, or that place might change. So let's not even rush there, because like you could completely change. But like, what's the least, like what's something that you can push yourself, but it's still achievable and reasonable for you? Because I don't want you to like, we can't do anything cold turkey because it's going to be a failure. And there's no magic pill. Like this dream, like that's magic. So like, if you don't have the magic, like what's one thing that would get you closer to there? And so like moving, and then there's also like an ideal image tool that is one of the resources that I got through my coaching program. And it's something that you fill out kind of at the beginning with like all the things that matter to you, all like where those are in terms of like, how are you honoring those? You can put as little or as few or as many as you'd like. But then like, what are some things that you can start doing to improve some of those? We don't want all of those to be perfect, but what are some things that you can do to improve some of those? And then like, you will be assessing every so often, like you might choose how often you want to assess, like how it's going and how close you're getting to that sort of ideal image for yourself, knowing that is most likely impossible to achieve. It's possible. And if you have the mindset that it's possible, you're even closer to reaching that point. But probably don't at the beginning of coaching. You probably don't have an ability to see it all being possible. So although everything is possible, it's gonna take some time. So so you can assess like, how am I evolving? How am I getting closer to that? And what things I might want to change. And so it's like sort of going forward, baby steps, and also reviewing what I had thought was amazing. Because you might think like, after a little while, you might actually look back and be like, oh, that's so funny, but that's what I wanted. I'm so much better now, and I didn't get there. I got somewhere else that's like better for me. So it's always good to sort of also review what we thought was the ideal.
Right. And your priorities might change once you start making some small shifts. The other part around comparison is feeling guilty. And I know there's a subtle difference between, just comparing yourself and feeling bad, but feeling guilty. Can you talk a little bit about mom guilt and why it's so prevalent and what we can do about it?
Yeah. So prevalent. And it's like connected in a way. I think the guilt comes from something that I mentioned briefly at the beginning, which was it's more around comparing ourselves to our own ideals, not to others,
right?
Oftentimes. So where those ideals come from, a variety of places. But guilt, I find that it's like there's mom guilt around, I'm not spending enough time with my kids.
That was a big one for me.
And mom guilt around, I am not following through with my rules that I made because, the things that are important. There's also mom guilt around like what I said before I had kids, like I always feel like
the before you had kids thing.
like it's like ridiculous. Like I was never going to do this. I was never going to do that. And now I'm doing it again. So what?
Yeah.
Right. Are you kids happy? Are your kids healthy?
Right.
But there's also mom guilt around mom guilt. Like, okay, so try to focus here. There are some people that don't actually have mom guilt about the typical things, but because other moms talk about it, they're like, oh crap, I'm a terrible mom. I don't mind going away on vacations. I must be horrible. I don't have mom guilt about it. So now I have mom guilt. Like, it's so complicated. And I think it goes back to like wanting to be perfect and being afraid of breaking our kids, being afraid of being the one that ruined it all. Whether it is because we didn't care about the rules that we had said we would have, like, oh, I totally was going to feed only organic and never have any screen time. And now it's like, Mommy, can I use the Kindle? Yeah, sure. Only 20 minutes. 2 hours later, I'm like, the 20 minutes are up. Like, you know, they're like, wow, that was
guilty.
a long 20 minutes.
In my house too.
But then when I actually enforce the 20 minutes, they're like, that was like 5 minutes. I'm like, no, that was like actual real 20 minutes. So I think we berate ourselves for like breaking rules that we thought for some reason were super important. Where like at the end of the day, kids really need like a third of the time, as long as it's like, so if you have like a lot of like the semi-attention, semi-present time with your kids, and then you have like a third of that time is really present, they're like amazing. You're like, you're an amazing parent.
I was reading an article the other day that we actually spend like 3 times as much time, or like some outrageous percent more than our parents spent with us.
I don't remember my mom playing with me.
I don't remember that much either. and yet it's so funny how society has put all these requirements on what motherhood looks like, and the not being there for my kids more. So I'll share a little bit of my background on that. So I was a camp counselor when I was in college, and I saw the kids that were there for early morning hours and then the extended hours in the evening, and I could tell that they were attention starved and bad listeners. And I swore to myself when I was that age, I'm like, I'm never going to do that with my kids. So fast forward to now that I have kids and I have a full-time job, and the reality is sometimes we have to have a babysitter, or I have to put them in some activities, and I felt tremendous guilt about that. But then I did some shifting of the way I thought about it, and I realized that I am having quality time with them. My kids know that they're loved. They get a lot of attention. They're really good kids. And that combined with, I shifted around my work schedule a little bit, so I was able to pick them up on some days. And I feel so much better about it, and I don't have the same mom guilt that I used to. But that used to nag at me just because of that promise I made to myself as an uninformed, childless college student. You know what I mean? Exactly. So I think there's a lot of those things where we make those rules for ourselves without really questioning them and why they make us feel so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, like I have the same thing. I shifted my work a little bit so that I can pick them up at after school. Because like my job, like if I was working 9 to 5, I would not be able to get to the after school program before they close at 5:30. So like, I mean, we don't do early drop off anymore, but we did for a little while, and that was horrible. It was like they were in school from 7 to 5:30.
That's such a long day.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, so we get home and it's like running around, like Thursdays are movie night. How often do I get to watch the movie with them? Like 5% of the time. And it kills me because it's a thing that I value. Like movie night is so awesome. They don't get to watch TV until Thursday movie night, and then the weekend they can watch TV. So it's like this big, huge thing that I implemented, and like, I'm not doing it. So, but again, I also shift. I do a lot of like revisiting, like, okay, the good evidence. Where's all the good evidence? We always tend to focus on the negative. Right. We tend to focus on like, my kid doesn't listen because I'm not paying enough attention to them. And then what is the good evidence though? Like I had started, last year I had started doing affirmations with my son because he was having some like negative self-talk, and I'm like, you are 5. You cannot already have an inner critic. Like, what is going on here? So I started doing some affirmations with him, and I would always end them with like, I am ticklish, and tickle him. And so like during the whole thing, he was repeating the affirmations after me and like anticipating like the tickly one. And like, you know, it became like a funny game, and it was his thing. And then one day I put him and his sister in the bath, and I'm like one room over, like I think I was trying to like do FaceTime with my mom or something. And they're playing in there, and I can hear him going, I am Eloisa. I am smart. And having her repeat after him. And I was just like, cheers, you know, like write it down, good evidence, you know, I'm doing something here. It's a little thing that like is making a big difference, and it's making him think that he has a special mom that teaches him this stuff. You know, when you give yourself permission to also trust your own intuition and your own instincts, and know that if you were a bad mom, you wouldn't wonder if you're a good mom. That makes you a good mom, the fact that you worry about it. The bad moms don't give a crap.
Right.
So look for the good evidence when you start judging yourself and feeling guilty about what you're doing or not doing.
And likely, if you're listening to this, you care because you're seeking out information, and you are a good mom.
Yeah.
The final topic I wanted to touch on, because this is my theme word for 2019, is why do you focus around joy?
Oh, yes. So let me see. It's like so I can't say it's like why I was put on earth, because I've always felt since a long, long time ago, before I did any personal development in my life, I've always known that I was put on this earth to love. And I remember when I was pregnant with my son, I wanted to write him a blog that was going to be private. Right. And I wanted the blog name to be Love is What I Do. And it was taken.
Of course.
So I did something else. And it's like not even it's not even real. It's like a Blogspot thing. Like it doesn't even have but it's like a private thing where I like wrote him letters during my pregnancy and stuff. And it just, I always knew like I'm here to love others. And so, but when I started on my own journey, I was like, getting sort of back in shape, or in some sort of shape, after having my second child. And I started out with like doing like beach body stuff at first. And I was like, I'm doing that. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Am I doing it to like look perfect, or why am I doing this? And the only thing that would come up was like, I'm doing it so that I can feel joy. Working out, pushing myself, working on loving myself, all that stuff is going to bring me joy. And like joy just kept popping up. So everything was like, why am I doing it for joy? Joy was my first ever like focus word. Like the first time I used it, it wasn't like as a word of the year. But then the following year it was like my word of the year. And it's just like whoever I connect with really well, like during coach training, I got really close with all my peers that were training with me. And they would give me little gifts, like a bracelet that said joy. It's just so important to me, because I think happiness is like a state of being, but joy is a choice that we can make. Joy is an emotion that we can choose to feel, and we can choose to look for it. Whereas happiness, like I see it, and everybody has different definition. But for me, happiness is more of like, you know, like you can feel joy and be having a really hard time and find moments of joy. But when you're unhappy, it's a little bit harder. When you, and you can be having a hard time and consider yourself a joyful person, because you can tap into it. So I read, and I'm kind of reading. I have like a little bit left because it takes me forever. I don't want it to end. You know, when you're like reading a book and you're like, don't want to finish reading it because then it'll be over. I don't know if that ever happens to you, but the Book of Joy is like my, like, it's like my, I won't say Bible because I like the Bible too.
Right.
So, but like the Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu is like, I find it to be like my textbook for life.
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I was just like, when I got that, I was like, ooh, I can do an entire group program on this. And I did. But I was like super brand new, so I would tweak it somehow now. But I highly recommend it because it's like a guide to really finding how to have joy, how to choose it in all different areas of life, and what are the things that take it away, and how you can, like anxiety and grief and worry, and jealousy and comparison takes it away. So how it works on all those different things, and what are the pillars for it, like gratitude and forgiveness, like forgiving yourself, not just forgiving other people.
Yes.
When you learn how to forgive yourself for things that you think you failed at, even though there's no such thing as failure.
Just feedback.
Exactly. Just way easier to find joy and like it.
Yeah.
Different things. So.
Yeah. Joy is, now that I've been in a practice of finding more joy and doing things that I enjoy more throughout my day, my whole life has shifted just because I feel better when I'm doing things that make me feel good. And like, life is not meant to be slogging through,
Exactly.
We're meant to be joyful.
Yeah.
So I have one final question for you, and that is, how do you connect to your true you?
Well, with my joy practices. So I call the things that I do to make that inject joy into my day, I call them my joy practice. And there are the things that I have come to find out that I enjoy because of who I am, and that make me feel authentic, and that nobody else needs to see me doing them for me to feel like fulfilled. And so those are just like, I need to be silly. I need to be. And that's not something that everybody embraces for themselves or for others. And when I feel comfortable posting a video on Instagram, not for the fact that I'm making it that much scarier, right? For if I post a video on Instagram of me dancing in my kitchen with my dog, being silly and making funny faces that do not make me look pretty, I'm like, well, if they like that, then they like the true me, because that's the true me. And if they don't, then being true to myself will help me not care about the ones that don't like it.
Totally.
But I found random things that I never thought were part of like who I was. Like when we adopted our dog last summer, it was a really hard transition, and I was waking up at 5:30 in the morning to work out for half an hour, and then I had a long time to get ready for work and make it to work on time. And I had this whole routine that I had created as a joy practice. And when I got my dog, I had to walk my dog for an hour in the morning. So, wow. And he was a lot of work, and we had to go through a period of months of doubting whether it had been a good idea. And I made a promise to him that I was going to do this, and I was going to walk him for his hour, regardless of the weather, regardless of what was going on. And I cannot tell you how much I look forward to 5:30 a.m. I wake up before the alarm goes off. I don't get up. I wait for the alarm. But no matter how tired I am, I jump out of bed because I love seeing the sunrise on my walk with my dog, regardless of how freezing it is outside. Because it's become this thing that like is a part of who I am. And I love it. And people, like, I talk people's ears off over the different dog walks. They're like, dog walk? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I even told my husband, oh, you changed. I was talking to the dog, and I was like, you changed my life. And my husband's like, how did he change your life? I'm like, did you not see the transformation that has happened? Oh, right, because you're still sleeping when I do it. But yeah, it's just listening. Listening for my purpose, listening for the things that make me feel like, me. I don't know. It's hard to put it into words, but
yes,
it's a thing of listening. It's not a thing of looking for it. It's a listening and a feeling, and kind of turns into a knowing. Like, you just wait for that to come for you, for like your purpose to come, for like your reason to be. And when you do it, you feel so, I hate like using all the buzzwords like genuine and authentic, but like, that's what you feel. You feel like things are Even if things are not the way that, even if they're not the way that you think you would be down, they're like the way that they need to be. And and you have the faith that even though you're not making all the money that you need to be making, or you're not able to quit your job and all those different things, you know that you're being true to yourself. And so it's going to all shape up into what it needs to be.
Yeah.
So
beautifully stated. Thank you for being here, Angie.
Thank you so much for having me.